Hi everyone, my name is Karen Fabian and I'm the founder of Bare Bones Yoga, and thanks for taking a moment to watch my YouTube channel here. So if you're like yoga teachers that I coach in my teacher training program on anatomy, you may have questions about how are you supposed to blend anatomy seamlessly into the cues that you provide. This is by far one of the most common themes that comes up for yoga teachers that I work with in my Blueprint Learning program. And so today when I was doing a coaching call, it brought up some really good questions, and I thought it would make good information for this quick video. So we started out by talking about anatomical position and the movements that are derived from that. And this is so important because I want you to think about the cues that you say as really being like the end game here. So here I am on the end of the mat. And anything that you share with your students in an anatomy-based cue, you should be able to walk back into its parts. So you should be able to walk back to the muscles that are creating the actions in the pose and the anatomical actions of the posture. And so what this really lends itself to is a discussion about, do you know the anatomical actions, and do you know the muscles that are concentrically contracting? And this, as you start to think about these questions, probably raises for you maybe some gaps in your knowledge around anatomy. So I'm just going to give you some quick examples. So let's say you had somebody in side angle lunge and you saw them like this instead of the true alignment, which is more like this. And you might wonder to yourself, I wonder why they're like that. Well, it would require you to understand what movements the shoulder makes. So let's just take a quick look. So the shoulder joint is a ball and socket, and it can move in a whole bunch of different ways. It can abduct, it can adduct, it can flex, it can extend, and the scapula can do separate things like elevate and depress and adduct and abduct and upwardly rotate and downwardly rotate. Now, of course, once you understand those anatomical actions, you can understand the muscles that create those actions. So in a posture like side angle, this shoulder here wants to be an external rotation, but in this example here is most definitely not an external rotation, but instead is an internal rotation. So again, you might be looking at that student and wondering, why is that student an internal rotation? Well, that would require you have an understanding of what muscles create internal rotation and what muscles create external rotation. And an assumption you could make is that the muscles in that student that create the desired action, here we're talking about external rotation, might be a little weak. And or the muscles that create the opposing action, or in this case, internal rotation, might be a little too strong, or as we say kind of out there in the world, overly contracted. And so that is in many cases what's happening in the case of the student like this, or what you might see, that same student who's decided to take the bind, either the half bind or the full bind, and now they're looking down at the floor. And you might be teaching, saying to them, I want you to roll your upper shoulder open, and they're trying to do it, but they're unable to do it. And you're wondering if they're just not hearing you or just being really difficult. So let's just quickly take a look at some of these muscles I'm referring to. So we've got muscles that internally rotate the shoulder. So two good candidates for that are pectoralis major and minor. And then you've got two muscles of the rotator cuff that externally rotate the shoulder, and two good candidates for that are the infraspinatus and the teres minor, which both connect the scapula to the humerus. And their primary action is external rotation. Now, as it turns out, something you might not know is that those muscles tend to be weak. And when you think about what we do a lot, hunch over the desk, that's a good reason for it, because we're constantly passively stretching the muscles that do the opposite shape. And so as a result, what shows up so much in the yoga classes that we teach, whether it's online or in person, is a lot of internal rotation. And it not only shows up in postures like this, but most definitely would show up in places where you want the shoulder externally rotated, but it's weight bearing, and so the inclination for the student, even more so, is to roll that upper shoulder in, because now it's bearing weight. And unless they're really aware of their alignment, they could just fall into that pattern of movement. So what can you do as a teacher? Well, you definitely can cue in the direction you want them to move and see if they can activate those muscles, teres minor and infraspinatus. And you can also build sequences that have a lot of opportunities for external rotation. So anything like this, or upward facing dog, or dancer's pose. Those are just some quick examples. Bridge pose with the hands interlaced, the fingers interlaced underneath. Those are all movements where you're using those external rotators in a concentrically shortening way. So therefore you're giving them a chance to strengthen and lengthen the muscles that are most likely too tight. So this is an example of how you could use an anatomy-based cue. You could even refer to some of those muscles. However, in order to confidently share that cue, it would definitely be necessary that you're able to walk back to the muscles that create the action and the anatomical actions in the pose. So that's one example of how you can walk your cues back to the fundamental components and help you connect everything together in the cue that you say. And I promise you, because I know this from working with so many teachers who I bet are just like you, when you pull all these pieces together, your confidence really goes up. And bonus, you have the freedom to say things how you want, because what you're saying comes from what you know rather than things you were just told to say for cues. So it's an opportunity to really be yourself. And there's nothing that's better for your confidence than just being yourself. So I hope you found this helpful. What I can offer you right now, since my program is not open for enrollment yet, is go on my website and just get on the wait list. It's the Blueprint Learning Program, and you'll see the link right there. And when you're on my homepage, you can download my 10 Key Steps to Learning Anatomy, which is one of my most popular downloads that walks you through a step-by-step way to learn anatomy. Now, I'd only say do that if you're going to go it solo. If you really want to speed up your learning in a good way and really get more out of your studying time, I would definitely say enroll in my program. And the best thing for that is to get on the wait list. I'll include the link for the wait list here, or you can just go direct to my website, barebonesyoga.com. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to click subscribe, and I'll see you here in the next video. Namaste.